Hey guys, it's Kevin Review for A Quiet Place Part 2. So what A Quiet Place Part 2 is essentially about is basically we do continue to center on the Abbott family. It takes place after the events of the first one to where they have in fact defeated the monster, but things have gotten a bit too dire to where now they need to leave their home and venture elsewhere, eventually running into Cillian Murphy's character, where now their main efforts are basically to try to save others and hopefully find a way to lessen this problem overall and see how others are doing. So, Quiet Place Part 2, I was definitely looking forward to this film. I will admit that the original Quiet Place, if you haven't seen my review for that, I adore that film. I think that film was wholly unique. It was a film that could have been very gimmicky, but it did it in such a way to where it actually strengthened the film and made it something really special. And I think it's one of the better modern day, mainstream horror films to come out in quite a bit. That being said, I never really saw it as a film that's going to get a franchise. I saw it as a really good standalone film that is very effective, very tense, but doesn't really need any more than what it is. So when the sequel was first announced, I was at first very hesitant. I didn't know if this was something I really wanted, but over time, the trailers we were getting and the fact that Krasinki was so confident, I really started to warm up to it more. Obviously, this was really the first big film to get delayed during the pandemic, which obviously the pandemic is still going on, but like when things were a lot more severe, this was one of the films to of course, get delayed, and we've had to wait for a long time now, and it's one of those films where, since it being delayed, it's one of the films that I've been the most excited to finally see, and it finally has come out, and I have to say, after waiting for so long, A Quiet Place Part 2 absolutely lives up to the hype for me. Not only is A Quiet Place Part 2 a really damn good horror sequel, it honestly, in some aspects, might just be a little bit better than the first one, but we are just getting into right now, starting off with the cast. And look, that was definitely one of the best things about the first film for sure. I think everyone did a really great job in terms of acting, but what I really love about this film is that I feel like everyone is just given a little bit more to do here. Everyone's given a bit more time to shine, and it really does make for such a great ensemble overall. But make no mistake, the star of this film, and really the person I think everyone's going to be marveling over, is Millicent Simmonds, who plays Regan. And look, I really loved her in the first film. I think that they did a really good job with I think she did a really good job with really showing us the fear and anxiety that this character has, even if she can't articulate it in any way. Obviously can't articulate in the way that she really wants to, but also sort of navigating her life. But here, she's just given a lot more to do. You really do see the resilience and just can-do attitude that Regan really does have. She wants to do what she can to help as many people as possible, and you really do latch onto that when it comes to her character. You see that while she is very fearful, she wants to do what she can to take on her father's legacy, kind of pick up where he left off, finish what he couldn't, and I think she does a really good job with that here. She is so likable in this role, but you also really buy into this character. You find yourself liking this character even more than the first one. She's given a lot more to do here, and I just absolutely love what she ended up doing. I was not anticipating for her to really be the main star of this, but she really does kind of walk away with the most to do, and I think gives such a masterful performance here. I really loved what she ended up doing. It was very emotional. There's a lot that she's given, and I really do hope we start to see her in more projects because she really does have it in her. I think she is just such a talent in that way, and I really love what she ended up doing in this film. Just phenomenal performance from her overall. Someone else that's given a lot more to do, though, is Noah Jupe. In the first film, he definitely had a role, but he probably had the least to do out of everyone. Whereas here, I feel like his role is much more pronounced. There is a specific situation that he is dealing with, and it gives him a lot more to do as a character. He has a lot more responsibilities to tackle. I don't want to spoil too much of why that is, but because of that, we're able to really lean into just how fearful this character really is. I mean, he's someone that does not have a lot of confidence in himself, and I think that's something that Jupe really does a great job with here. I was very impressed by his performance in this film. He really did do an excellent job here for sure, and definitely was another one of the big standouts in this movie for me. But the other big standout I would have to say is the addition of Cillian Murphy's character. I think he really fit in here. I mean, this is someone that, you know, is a really good contrast to the... He's very cynical. He's very much hardened since this event has taken place, since this creature has emerged, and he does an excellent job in this role. It is a far more emotional performance than I really was expecting, and I really liked what he ended up doing here. And definitely, if they're going to make A Quiet Place Part 3, which I think is inevitable at this point, I'm very excited that we're going to be continuing to follow his character. I think he... Obviously, you know, you're worried about Krasinki not being in as big of a role, because he is in this film, but he's not in it as much. I think Murphy fills those shoes pretty nicely. I liked what he ended up doing here. As far as the rest cast goes, everyone else does a really good job. You may have noticed I didn't really mention Emily Blunt as much, and that's because she definitely has more of a supporting role in this movie. But for what she has, she's still really great. I mean, she continues to really show how good she is as this character of Evelyn, the lengths that she's willing to go to protect her children, constantly putting herself in harm's way. I mean, she just does such an excellent job with it, and I'm constantly stunned by just how great of an actress Emily Blunt is, and I think she just does such an excellent job throughout this entire film. I loved what she really ended up doing here. Djimon Hounsou is pretty good here too. Really, this entire cast, I mean, everyone does a great job throughout this film. I think, honestly, the performances might just be even a bit better than what they did in that first movie. All right, now let's get into the directing and the writing, which, for me, this is easily the biggest improvement. Because, look, I love John Krasinski's directing in that first film, which, contrary to my original statement, is not a directorial debut in any way. He directed, like, 2 films before it. But I have to say, after watching this film, horror is definitely his strong suit, because he has actually improved quite a bit as a director. And again, that's not to say his directing wasn't great in the first film, because it was, but I think here it's just a bit more refined. It's clear that Krasinski has a lot more confidence in himself as a director, so he's willing to take a few more chances, and I think he really does kind of go for it here. I mean, the first film, I wouldn't really classify it as a horror film. It's tense. It definitely can be very frightening, but it's definitely more of a survival thriller. This film is a straight-up horror film, and he really does a great job, I think, of leaning into that. I mean, this film is very terrifying to watch. He really does a great job of constantly putting you on edge and really just kind of putting you into this situation. I loved what he really ended up doing in terms of his direction here, but yet he also finds a way to infuse it with a lot of great character drama that's going on throughout this film. This film is still... it's actually very character driven. I'll get more into that with the writing, but I was very impressed by his directing here. There were many moments in this film that had me on edge. There were many moments of this film that just had me just absolutely shivering, not knowing what was going to happen. And again, similar to that first film, you want to be very careful when it comes to the noise here. You know, you don't want that monster to trigger the Abbott family, and you'd worry that maybe now that we know who the monster is and what it looks like, that takes some of the tension away. It actually does the opposite. It makes that creature that much more frightening, because you know what it's capable of, and you know what it can do to this family. So I think he did a really good job with the directing here overall. The writing, though, as well, is really, really well done, I think, because that's obviously the biggest concern going into this movie is it really necessary? And I think A Quiet Place Part 2, in terms of the writing, does everything a sequel really should. I mean, first of all, the big thing to note is that, as I said before, this is not really Emily Blunt's movie. She's definitely in the film, and it's not like she's not in the film that much, because she is, but she definitely is put more in the background. I think while the first film was very much about, you know, the lengths that the parents go to protect the kids, this one kind of turns it on its head. It's more about what the kids will do to protect their parents, and because of that, we really do get to focus a lot more on some of the characters that were in the first film but didn't have as big of a role as they do here. Specifically, like I said, Regan, her whole plot line in this movie is very interesting. You know, she had a very interesting relationship with John Krasinski's character, and you can see that she is someone that really wants to, like, fulfill his legacy. She wants to do what she can, you know, to go on this path. And the quest that she goes on in this movie, it's a very interesting one. You don't know what's really going to come of it, but you really are fascinated by what she's doing in this film. And I think they did some really great stuff when it comes to this character, who is just as interesting on her own, I feel like. I think they did a lot of great stuff with Regan as a character, and it made me that much more interested in who she really was, because the first film we knew there was a lot that she wanted to do, and here she really gets to do them because she's on her own a lot in this movie. That's the other thing to note, is that this is one of those sequels where the characters are separated for a while. We have a few storylines going on here, but I never felt that it was convoluted. I felt like every storyline made sense in the context of this film. Now, yes, it is very basic, where you have a character trying to retrieve an item, or you have a character trying to get something, or you have a character trying to evade a creature. It is very basic like that, but I feel like with a story that already is so riveting in itself, there's not a lot you need to do to keep my interest, and this film really does do a great job with that, especially when it comes to, like I said, the character of Regan, but also the character of Marcus, the way that he needs to step up and kind of do something that he's not sure how to really do, I thought was really interesting. It makes you really are that much more interested in his character. You are hoping that he's able to fulfill this task, and I really like what they did with Marcus. I think they really did, strengthen him as a character. He already was really good in the first one, but again, here you're really interested in what he is going to do here. So I think those two characters are just rock solid overall. And then the addition of Cillian Murphy, I think makes for a very good foil to the Abbott's optimism, because that's the one thing within them, is that they have this sense of optimism. They want to do what they can to try to move past this. They're not going to let this monster get in their way. They are concerned throughout this film with getting to know, seeing how other people are affected by this and if they can save them. And you see his much more cynical viewpoint. He is someone that has been completely hardened by this to the point where he has very little hope left in him. And you really do kind of see that throughout this film, and his character really does make a lot of sense. I think the contrast that we have, I think he gives us a viewpoint that we didn't have in that original film. Again, that he's just someone that doesn't really have much faith in the world. He's very crestfallen with how things have become, and he has a very specific reason for that. And I think they really did a great job with leaning heavier into his dynamic, especially when it comes to his relationship with Regan's character. There's a very interesting dynamic that they shared that I was surprised that they ended up taking it in the direction that they did, but I think it really did work because it made those two characters that much better, and I think he just fit right in as a character. But the film also does a lot of expansion of the world, and I think that's something that is very interesting, because something that I know a lot of people mentioned in the first movie as a criticism is that we didn't see enough of the rest of the world. How are they really dealing with this? And there's some really interesting stuff that we're open up to. There's one community especially that we find out about, and I thought it was really interesting what they decided to do with it. The different ways that these characters, find out different things about this creature, but also maybe ways to fight back against it. All of that is really interesting stuff, and it makes for a really different kind of narrative that I definitely really did enjoy a lot. So I think the writing here is overall really good, and like I said, in terms of scares, I mean, this film absolutely tops itself. I feel like every scene is that much scarier than the first. I mean, the opening sequence, forget about it. It's already, I think, going to be it's going to be known as one of the best opening sequences in any horror film. I think it's going to be one of those sequences that you can put on and you immediately know what it's from. You immediately are locked into it because they do get to show you day one in this movie. They actually do show the process of what really happened and the way that everything unravels so slowly. It's very patient in that way. That really does apply to the majority of this film. I mean, the film is very slow. It's not like there's constantly, being attacked by this creature, or they constantly have to do what they can to evade this creature. There's a little bit more, there's a lot of moments of breathing room, and that's why this opening sequence, I think, is so effective in that way, because it does take its time to fully unleash, and it is one of the most horrifying, but also one of the most expertly crafted opening sequences I've seen in a horror film in quite a bit. Everything about this just had me absolutely stunned with how well they really did go about it. Again, even though we know what's going to happen, we are that much more invested because of how well executed it really is. And I think just the scares in this movie are so good. There's a scene on a boat as well. Holy shit. I mean, just absolutely terrifying stuff. They really don't hold back when it comes to the scares in this movie, and I really enjoyed a lot of the horror here, but the cinematography as well. That's something that worked really well in this first movie, but even more so here. Again, you really do feel like you are in this situation with the Abbotts. When they, you've seen the trailer, but when they're trying to leave their house and they're trying to make their way through this field without making any noise, you are really just kind of clenching at your fists. You are very much... you're clenching at your fists. You feel very white-knuckled. You don't know what's going to happen in that way. And I think it's because of how good that cinematography is. It feels so visceral. And that uncomfortable silence throughout the film definitely is still there. There's a lot of moments in the trailer where you'll hear characters speaking. They don't speak as much as you think they would. They speak more in this movie, but I do think that there's a significant amount of time where they're not speaking, and it makes for a very interesting experience. And so the cinematography does a lot of the work in really setting up certain places in this world, certain locations that they go to. It just sticks out that much more because of the different locales, because of the different things that we get to show. We're not as trapped in this one area, but we also don't know what is really safe at this point. So again, as an audience, you feel just as lost as the Abbott family, where you don't really know where to go, but you know that there's got to be something better out there. And so I think they did a really good job when it came to the cinematography in this film. And again, the sound design, is just wholly unique. There's an experience that I think is very special in that way. It's very rare you can go into a movie with this kind of experience. And when you see this movie, there are going to be moments that are in complete silence, or at least they're supposed to be, because my audience was not exactly respectful of that at times, but that's an entirely different discussion. In general, I think it's similar to the first one. It's just such a special experience. And the thing I've loved is that it's never felt like a gimmick to me. It just feels very atmospheric. It feels like a part of the world. And I think it's the best way for them to really go about it in terms of the sound design here. Something else that I enjoyed more is the score. In the first film, I found it a bit too intrusive. I felt like it got in the way of some moments in the film. I didn't feel that way this time around. I felt like the score was utilized very well in this movie. I think Marco Beltrame did a really good job, especially in the more calming moments of the film. I think the score really sticks out then, and I really enjoyed his score throughout this film. And the editing, this film, similar to the first one, it's only about 97 minutes long, and I think that definitely is the perfect length for it. I like that these movies are pretty short. They don't try to go on any longer than they need to, and I really do appreciate that. But the other thing I think that's really impressive when it comes to the editing is that there's a lot of cross-cutting in this film, and that can get very convoluted and messy if not handled well, but they really do find a way to cut the film in such a way to where it feels like this is fitting. You know, when you're cutting from one event happening and then something similar is happening in another part of the film, it just kind of works. It never feels like, oh, this is just another thing that's happening. It feels like it is happening at the same time. It feels very organic in that way. And so I have to credit the editor to this film, because I think it's a really hard task. It's a very tall task to make something like that work, but I think as an editor, Michael P. Shaver does such a great job of just cutting between certain scenes in this film, and I was just very impressed by what he was doing. So I think the editing, it's some of the most impressives I've seen in quite a bit. So overall, I'm really loving this movie. There's a lot that it does do really well. Is there anything that does bring it down? Well, the only real flaw I do have when it comes to A Quiet Place Part 2, and the only thing I think that brings it down just a bit, is that there is a community that we're introduced to. Like I said, there's a lot of expansion of the world, and there's a point in the film where we are introduced to this community, and that's where Hounsou's character comes into play. And while I understand why they ultimately did what they did, I needed a little bit more of this community. I feel like we get there and it feels like we kind of leave as soon as we entered. And I wanted to see a little bit more of what they could do with this community. It's a very fascinating one. It was a world that felt a little bit different, that felt drastically different from what we've seen in these films so far. And I just felt they could have done a little bit more with it, and they just didn't really do that. So I wanted to see more of what they could really do with that overall. But other than that, I mean, this is really everything I could have wanted. A Quiet Place Part 2, I think, is really the ideal horror sequel. It does a great job of expanding the character development, of expanding the world and getting us to know a little bit more of what's going on, but also diving deeper into some of these characters that we really didn't get to do in the first movie. It's scarier than the first one. It finds a way to introduce new layers to the story that otherwise that actually do make it a little bit more interesting. And it's one of those films where the second you watch it, I think you will be I think you will definitely question why you ever doubted it. John Krasinski's directing is truly masterful here. He really does have an eye for horror, and he really does prove that. But again, it also leans very heavily into the family drama and what really drives this family to do what they do overall. It's a wholly unique experience, and it's definitely the kind of film that I think if you are someone that hasn't gone to the theater in a long time, this is definitely the kind of film to bring you back. It's the kind of film that cinema was absolutely made for, and I am so happy that we were able to get it. I know that it's been a long wait, but it absolutely did live up to the hype, and honestly, because of how good the sequel was, I definitely do want to see more. I think there's a lot more they can do with this series, and I hope if it continues to go in the direction that it is, I think this can be one of the better horror franchises that we've ever had. It already gave us one of the better horror sequels, so I don't really see what's stopping them from doing that. But overall, this is everything I really could have wanted in a sequel. It's definitely one of the best films I've seen all year, and I'm absolutely going to give A Quiet Place Part 2 overall an A. But over, guys, to my review of A Quiet Place Part 2. Let me know what you guys saw of this movie overall. Left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.